Have you ever felt someone slowly disappear while still being physically present? Not through an argument, not through a breakup, but through silence. One day they were warm, responsive, emotionally there. And then something shifted. Messages became shorter. Eye contact felt different. Their presence felt distant even when they were right beside you. And the hardest part wasn't the distance itself. It was the not knowing. You replay conversations in your head. You question your words. You wonder if you asked for too much, or if you missed something important. You feel this quiet ache, because nothing officially ended. Yet something clearly changed. And the question that hurts the most is the one you ask yourself in silence. What did I do wrong? Before we go any further, let me say this clearly and gently. This space is safe. There is no blaming here of you or of them. If you're listening to this, it's likely because sudden emotional distance left you confused, unsettled, maybe even questioning your worth. And that reaction makes complete sense. Emotional distance triggers one of the deepest human fears: disconnection without explanation. But emotional withdrawal is rarely about someone being careless, heartless, or intentionally cruel. And just as importantly, it's rarely a reflection of your value. Today, we're not here to diagnose or accuse. We're here to understand. Because when we understand what's happening psychologically, the pain softens. The confusion loosens its grip. And instead of internalizing the distance, you begin to see it with clarity. This isn't about justifying hurtful behavior. It is about making sense of a painful emotional pattern so you can stop carrying blame that was never yours to hold. Sudden emotional distance often feels personal, but psychologically, it's usually internal. One of the most common reasons is emotional overwhelm. Some people don't process emotional intensity by talking or leaning in. Instead, their nervous system responds by pulling away. When emotions become too strong, connection, expectations, vulnerability, their system interprets it as danger rather than safety. This isn't a conscious decision. It's a protective response. Another powerful reason is avoidant attachment. People with avoidant attachment styles often crave connection, but struggle deeply with closeness. When emotional intimacy increases, when things start to feel serious, real, or emotionally exposing, their instinct is to create space. Not because they don't care, but because caring feels threatening. There's also fear of vulnerability. Emotional closeness requires being seen, flaws, fears, uncertainties included. For someone who learned early in life that vulnerability leads to rejection, criticism, or loss, pulling away feels safer than opening up. Sometimes emotional distance comes from internal stress or unresolved trauma. Pressure at work, family struggles, emotional exhaustion, old wounds resurfacing. When someone is emotionally overloaded, they may not have the capacity to show up the way they once did. And instead of explaining it, they withdraw, not to punish you, but to survive internally. Another often overlooked reason is loss of emotional regulation. When people don't know how to process their feelings, they disengage. Silence becomes their coping strategy. Distance becomes their way of regaining control. In psychology, this is known as emotional deactivation, shutting down of emotional expression to avoid discomfort. What's important to understand here is this: most emotional distance is not an action against you. It's an action for self-protection. Let's bring this into a real human scenario. Imagine two people who shared warmth, openness, and emotional connection. Conversations flowed sale. There was laughter, presence, emotional safety. Then, slowly, things changed. One person started replying less. They stopped sharing thoughts the way they used to. Affection faded, not dramatically, but noticeably. The other person felt it immediately. They didn't confront it at first. They didn't want to seem needy or dramatic. So they waited. They adjusted. They tried to be understanding. But inside, questions grew louder. Did I say something wrong? Am I asking for too much? Why do I feel like I'm the only one trying? What the distant person didn't say was this: they were feeling overwhelmed. The connection was becoming emotionally intense. Expectations, real, or imagined felt heavy. And instead of communicating those feelings, not because the relationship was bad, but because intimacy felt unfamiliar and unsafe. So they did what their nervous system knew best. They pulled away. And the person on the receiving end was left holding confusion, self-doubt, and unanswered questions. This is how emotional distance creates pain, not through rejection, but through silence. Here's the part that matters most. The human brain is wired for safety before connection. When emotional closeness triggers fear, whether from past experiences, attachment wounds, or stress, the brain activates protective mechanisms. For some people, that looks like shutting down emotionally. Their nervous system shifts into a state of self-preservation. Emotional expression feels risky. Engagement feels draining. So distance feels like relief. This doesn't mean the relationship didn't matter. It doesn't mean the connection wasn't real. It means their internal world couldn't handle the closeness at that moment. And because many people were never taught how to express emotional overwhelm, they don't explain it. They don't say, "I'm struggling." They don't say, "I need space to regulate." They just disappear emotionally. This is where misunderstanding happens. The person left behind often assumes responsibility. They internalize the distance as rejection. Their mind searches for flaws. Their self-worth quietly erodes. But emotional distance is not a measure of your love. It's a reflection of someone else's emotional capacity. Understanding this doesn't mean you excuse neglect or silence. It means you stop turning someone else's coping mechanism into your personal failure. You can care deeply and still recognize when someone cannot meet you emotionally. Both truths can coexist. If you're sitting with the weight of emotional distance, please hear this. You are not too much. You are not difficult. You did not imagine the connection. Someone pulling away emotionally does not erase the value of what you shared or the value of who you are. Your need for clarity, presence, and emotional safety is valid. Wanting consistency does not make you needy. It makes you human. And while understanding the psychology behind emotional distance can bring peace, it's also okay to choose yourself, to honor what you need, to step back from dynamics that leave you questioning your worth. Emotional maturity isn't chasing someone who retreats. It's recognizing when you deserve steadiness, communication, and care. You don't have to harden your heart because someone else didn't know how to hold closeness. Stay soft. Stay aware. Stay grounded in your truth. Because emotional distance says more about emotional capacity than emotional value. If these quiet psychological truths resonate with you, subscribe for calm psychology insights where we slow down, understand emotional patterns, and heal without blame. You don't have to navigate emotional confusion alone.